Good evening and welcome to Newell News with me, Christopher Howley, and my co-anchor, Rachel Lyons, on Monday, the 14th of August.
Tonight's main story. The situation in Germany remains tense. Public unrest is increasing, leading to widespread protests following the closure of the border between West and East Berlin yesterday morning. We're going straight to West Berlin, where Shauna Higgins is on the ground. Shauna, can you fill us in on what's been happening over the past 24 hours?
Thanks, Rachel. Launched at midnight Sunday morning to catch the city off guard, a barrier was constructed between West and East Germany. In the space of a few hours, a 96-mile barbed wire fence up to 6 feet high was constructed, and Berliners were left this morning woken up in a divided city. All train services have been cut off between the two sectors, and 67 of the 81 crossing points have been cut off, and there has been strict monitoring on the movement between.
Do you have an idea of what the reason is for the barricade being built?
The GDR claim that the construction of this barricade has been an anti-fascist protection wall in an attempt to prevent a Third World War. Contrary to this, many are claiming that it is in fact an attempt to keep the 1.1 million people that reside in East Berlin put, with a vast increase of immigration over the past weeks, with 20% of East Germans having travelled to West Berlin. 4,130 people were signed into the refugee camp in West Berlin yesterday alone.
Has the divide been totally closed off at this stage?
The Brandenburg Gate was closed at 1 p.m. by East German police after 5,000 West Berlin protesters threw rocks at East German soldiers. Many have described the construction of this barrier as menacing, a fraudulent violation, and downright illegal. One constructor of the wall described it as a gut-wrenching feeling while he was walling away his family. Families have been separated and many unsure about future events as many of their jobs are in eastern Berlin.
Finally, Shauna, have we heard anything from the government in Berlin?
The West German Chancellor, Konrad Adenauer, appealed this evening asking for people to remain calm and stating that we are closely bonded with all Germans on the Russian zone and in eastern Berlin. They are and remain our German brothers and sisters. The federal government remains firmly confident on unifying all Germany. It is unsure for how long the barrier will remain between West and East Germany, but one thing is for sure, things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Thank you, Rachel.
We'll have to leave it there for now, Shauna. Thank you. Shauna Higgins, our reporter from Berlin.
Meanwhile, on the eastern side of the city, stranded families remain in a state of panic as they are trapped on the Soviet side of the city. The increased presence of armed Soviet soldiers is stopping anyone from attempting to cross the city. We go live to our correspondent Kate O'Gorman, who is on the east side of the city. Kate, what is the atmosphere like at the moment?
Thanks, Christopher. The atmosphere is extremely tense. There are guards everywhere and barbed wire has been used to divide the east and the west side. The place is full of armed guards who've been ordered to shoot and kill any person who tries to break through to the west side. Numerous guards are patrolling the barricade with trained guard dogs, ensuring no one can attempt to escape. The East Germany tanks can be seen on the streets also.
And what are the feelings of the people down there in the city at the moment, Kate? Have you spoken to anyone?
Yes, I've been talking to a man who lives in the east but works in the west, and he has been told to look for work in the east now. Many people are stressed and panicking. News of the restrictions has been given in a special announcement over the East German radio. It is stated that, in agreement with the decision of the Political Advisory Council of the Warsaw Pact Powers, the East German government has taken the following measures which are necessary in the interests of the peace of Europe, in the interests of the German Democratic Republic, and of the security of the socialist camp. East Berlin police last night threw smoke bombs and tear gas bombs into a crowd of East German youths who were not far from the border.
Is there any way for the people separated from their loved ones to contact them?
No, communication has been cut, which has resulted in panic and devastation as people are beginning to realise that they can't contact their loved ones at the other side to ensure their safety. The trains and transport lines have also been stopped. I've been talking to two people who are separated from their family. One woman, Olga Seeger, has been divided from her daughter who lives not far away in East Berlin. She's tried to contact her, but due to the lines being cut, she is left terrified at the thought of never being able to see her daughter again. Another woman, Ida Siekman, has been cut off from her sister, who lives in the western sector of the city only a few blocks away. She is very distressed and was in tears as the panic has hit that she may never see her sister again.
That was Kate O'Gorman, our German correspondent in East Berlin.
Coming up after the break, We'll be talking about the situation in more detail with our panellists.
You know, this was me 5 years ago, and it's still me. As I confess, I'm a waistline watcher from way back. Well, that's enough for today. Now for a lively lift. Ice-cold Coca-Cola. There's no waistline worry with Coke, you know. Actually, this individual-sized bottle has no more calories than half a grapefruit.
Welcome back. Tonight's main story again. The situation in Berlin continues to escalate as a large Soviet presence is preventing anyone from crossing into the other side of the city.
Tonight's panel consists of experts in the field of international relations. We're joined by Erika Müller, Professor of German Studies from Trinity College Dublin, Clément Pouillard, an expert in Soviet history, Jane Vaughan from the British Embassy in Berlin, and Brittany Joy, an American government official, live from the White House. Starting with you, Erika, what's the situation like in Germany?
Thanks, Rachel. The situation in Germany is very bad in the moment. We have feelings of shock, disappointment, anger, helplessness and resignation. A united Germany seems less and less possible after the border was closed today, even in the last loophole, Berlin. In West Germany, we're currently in the final phase of the election. I believe that the election will be greatly influenced by the closure of the border. We had several protests in West Berlin today. One of them was the work and traffic standstill, which was initiated by German Confederation of Trade Unions. Another one was that the AEG turbine factory workers, 2,000 people, marched to Schöneberg to protest against the inactivity of the Allies. This protest rose to 6,000 people. As a result, the East Berlin police was decided to close the Brandenburger Tor temporarily. In East Berlin and East Germany is far worse. We have 15,000 armed People's Police standing in first line at the sector border. 7,000 people, soldiers actually, of the National Police Army standing in second line. And behind that, as I become just aware of just before the show, the Soviet Army. There's a great fear that there's a repetition of the rebellion of the 17th June 1953. As we all know, the blockade between East and West is there since the end of the Second World War, since 1945, the Potsdam Conference, where Germany was divided in 4 zones.
I suspect this goes back to working and economic conditions. What are the differences between East and West?
The economic differences between East and West are very great. We have in the East a socialist land economy with the collectivization of agriculture. Even though they double the industrial production, there are no innovations whatsoever. The system is modeled on the Soviet Union. This led to a lack of opportunities to increase production. The Cold War led to exclusion of Western markets, and immigration led to a lack of skilled professionals. However, all these also led to the immigration I was just talking about. The working conditions obviously are very poor. On the other hand, we have West Germany, which is since the 1950s greatly improving. It's actually booming. The Volkswagen Beetle is their flagship. Even though growth of agricultural employment decreased over the last few years, there's an increase in service sectors. The West Germany is part of the core and steel community since 1951 and the economic community since 1958. You can imagine the West is way better off by now than the East, and the immigration keeps going on because of that.
The differences between East and West are increasing. How is the political situation which led to the division between East and West?
The difference between East and West Germany are as great as the economic ones. Currently, in West Germany, we're shortly before the general election, which is only next month. We have 2 main candidates there. Bundeskanzler Konrad Adenauer, who's currently in power. On the other hand, we have Willy Brandt, who is the leading candidate for the opposition, the SPD, and mayor of Berlin. Bundeskanzler Adenauer has shown his inactivity in the moment, and Germans are not very happy about it. His general election campaign is ongoing. He shows no sympathy for Berlin whatsoever, and his policies on apparent Germany have failed. Willy Brandt, on the other hand, has stopped his campaign immediately, returned to Berlin, and inspected the measures taken on the 13th of August. It is also said that he has contacted the American officials to get them doing something against the border. On the other hand, we have East Germany. There's only one party leading in the moment, closely resembling a dictatorship and closely modeled on the Soviet Union. It is the SED, the Socialist Unity Party of Germany, whose head is Walter Ulbricht. Walter Ulbricht, only a month ago, he has assured us that nobody has the intention to build a wall. Obviously, this cannot be true anymore. On the 12th of August, then, the GDR Council of Ministers, Ulbricht included, have signed the papers to go ahead with the closing of the border in Berlin. Currently, there are 3 divisions, military divisions, moving closer to Berlin in case West Germany makes a move. On Sunday, then, road traffic restrictions and border crossing regulations have been put in place and only 13 crossings remain open. However, the last loophole for East Germans to enter West Germany have been closed.
Does this have any impact on Irish citizens in Berlin at the moment, or for those who plan to travel to Berlin at some stage?
I would advise every Irish tourist in Germany to stay away from Berlin, to stay away, in fact, of all sector borders. The instructions, however, for foreigners stay the same. There are 13 crossings still open, 4 of which day passes can be gained. These are Wollangstraße, Brandenburger Tor, Eisenstraße, and Bahnhof Friedrichstraße. However, please do stay away. The situation at the moment is calm, but definitely not secure. Temperatures are running high, and the situation in general is very poor. Thank you.
Jane, our British expert, has there been a swift response from the British government following the construction of the Berlin Wall?
It appears the building of the wall has caught Prime Minister Macmillan and his government off guard. When the news first broke on British soil that the wall was underway, Prime Minister Macmillan was undertaking in his annual grouse shooting activities in Yorkshire. The news didn't seem to faze Mr Macmillan, as he decided that there was no reason to leave his activities and continued on.
Upon hearing the news, has the government made any official statement?
Yes, Sir Christopher Steele, the British ambassador in West Germany, released a statement earlier on this evening. In this he said, "Personally, I've always wondered why the East Germans have waited so long to seal this boundary. Early indications portray a stance that the government are stalling for time before they are due to meet with their American counterparts early next week."
Is this news likely to further sour relations between the British government and their German counterparts?
Prior to this event, it is common knowledge that Britain have become intertwined with a tangle with West Germany. For a while now, the government wanted Bonn to share more of a share of the cost with the British presence there. It is only last month, that in July, that there was contingency plans in case of another Soviet blockade in Berlin. Mr Macmillan himself retaliated with a statement saying, "Britain should make it clear that we pay nothing towards the expenses of any new conflict." It looks rather unlikely that Macmillan and his government will be resolute in attributing any sources or finances to German soil unless the circumstances change.
Is financial or military intervention likely?
At this early stage, military intervention on any large scale can be ruled out. It has become apparent that the building of the wall has coincided with large-scale cutbacks to the British military. The recent economic turbulence has resulted in every facet of the military being revised. The economic circumstances surrounding the cutbacks has even convinced the traditionally imperialistic Conservatives to agree with the military reform. Even before this latest twist of events in Berlin, plans had already been in place by Defence Minister Harold Wilkinson not to increase Britain's military presence in West Germany and Berlin, but to drastically reduce it. It is likely that conscription for the British Armed Forces will be disabled within the next 6 months. It seems that the numerical power of the British Army of the Rhine will also be reduced. Even the custodial sentence of the 3,500 British troops stationed in the British sector of Berlin might be subjected to a culling operation. All these factors are making a substantial impact.
Is Berlin likely to feature on top of the British government agenda?
No, it seems unlikely that Berlin question will be a top priority for the government anytime soon, as Britain faces mounting domestic issues and problems overseas. With regards to foreign policy, Britain has problems elsewhere. In the Middle East, the British must combat the newly radicalised Republic of Iraq under its fairly strong arm, Brigadier Hassan. Hassan has laid claim to the British Kingdom of Kuwait and has spent most of June and July massing its army in the in-border zone. the government has withdrawn substantial troops from Cyprus and home to command and defend Kuwait Flashpoint, adding further costs to the sector that has recently been devoid of funding. Before yesterday's announcement, the Prime Minister diplomats were still frantically occupied with arranging peacekeeping forces for the Arab League to take over the protection of Kuwait. While British conscripts sweating in the 50-degree heat in the desert south of Basra trying to oppose the Iraq army, all these mitigating factors will more than likely result in Berlin Wall taking a backseat as far as the British government is concerned.
Clement, if I could begin by asking you, why a wall and what's the meaning of this entire event?
There are two main reasons. The first one is political, the second one is about immigration.
By immigration, you mean the flee of East German people?
Yes, exactly. The Eastern Germany and the USSR do not accept immigration because, in their propaganda, their regimes should be attractive and competed the Western model, especially in Berlin. Immigration was a symptom of problems, so it was unacceptable for them. Then, immigration was one of the most important reasons of the construction of this barrier. East Germany was faced to the migration of this population towards West Germany. Since the creation of the state in 1949, more than 3 million Eastern Germans fled to Western Germany. Berlin was the easiest way to flee the Eastern Bloc. Many Eastern Bloc citizens left their country by flying via Berlin, like the Polish. It was a real problem for East Germany.
But were the communists compelled to build a wall? It sounds crazy.
Actually, in 1952, East Germany made immigration more and more difficult for Eastern citizens. But this action did not prevent immigration. Thus, it was decided by East Germany to build this barrier. Khrushchev, USSR president, sees the blockade as a way of stopping the geographical loophole which sees thousands of East Germans fleeing to the fascist West, as he names it.
Okay, we can see it seems logical to them, according to their immigration problem.
Indeed, the Eastern economy suffered from this immigration. The country lost well-educated people to build again the country. This brain drain prevents the country from developing this economy. Many skilled and young people left East Germany to have a better wage in West Germany. East Germany lost a good and qualified workforce because of immigration. Some Eastern Germans left their country because they were opposed to the communist regime. They could show their opposition to the Communist Party by leaving East Germany. This lack of commitment in the new country shows the problem in the society.
And what exactly is Khrushchev's position?
Khrushchev already attempted to solve Berlin's question 4 years ago, in 1958. It's an episode known under the name of the Berlin Ultimatum. Alfred Khrushchev declared afterward that it was not an ultimatum at all. Nevertheless, in a famous press conference, he named West Berlin a malignant tumor and gave 6 months to the Western powers to give up the city. He believed that Americans and their allies were not ready to bet the world peace just for one city. He was wrong. Eisenhower stayed firm, and after some diplomatic meetings, the story was forgotten.
But this incident didn't shake the public opinion?
Of course it did. I don't know if you remember, but for some people, it was the beginning of a World War III, or even an apocalypse. An interesting point is that, officially, this ultimatum was not presented like a territorial issue. In the note that Khrushchev sent to the government of America, France and England, he pointed out that Berlin should become a free city, and solving this problem was in favor of a general world peace.
But I suppose Khrushchev knew that the Americans didn't want to let him grab West Berlin. So why did he act like that?
We are not sure. It happened just 4 years ago. In history, we need time to have a complete explanation. Nevertheless, we should think about the situation in the communist side. China is going to have an independent international policy, and even the Khrushchev's position in USSR is not very good. Now, like in 1958, Khrushchev is affirming his position of communist leader against the capitalist side.
Brittany, what is the American people's reaction to the wall being built?
The news of the Berlin Wall has put fear in many Americans. They're afraid that the Cold War might turn into something physical or even nuclear.
Could you see this coming?
Tensions have been continuing to rise after the Vienna summit. The Kennedy administration says that something like this was bound to happen at some point. In 1964, Henry Wallace, Secretary of Commerce, acknowledged the growing rift between America and the Soviet Union. More recently, just a few days ago, Secretary of State Rusk urged NATO to increase their military to show the Soviet Union of the Western determination.
Do you think this could have been prevented?
President Kennedy has made it clear that America is willing to come to an agreement alongside its World War II allies to discuss a peace treaty that will cover all of Germany and not just part of it. Premier Khrushchev is still not willing to come to an agreement, and the situation was only avoidable at the expense of a war.
What is the current state of relations with the Soviet Union?
President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev discussed the ultimatum that Khrushchev gave at the Vienna summit. The two leaders did not make much progress on reaching an agreement. President Kennedy later released a statement in July in regards to the Soviet government's aid memoir on Germany and Berlin, which was received on June 4th. Kennedy says that America and its World War II allies have consistently been willing to reach an agreement with the Soviet Union to protect Germany as a whole. However, the Soviet Union has been making efforts continuously to counteract the unification of Germany. And they want nothing more than to split the city and renounce the West.
What would it mean if Khrushchev declared war on America?
On July 25th, President Kennedy reiterated that the American people did not want to fight, but many were urging the Western powers to destroy the wall themselves. If the Western powers were to destroy the wall, that would lead to an ultimate war. Instead, Kennedy was urging the use of maximum propaganda to exploit the Eastern government and how much it is despised, and their use of a free city, which ultimately was not free.
Thank you, Brittany. Finally, to conclude tonight's show, here's Evan with the newspapers. Evan?
Thank you, Chris. Tonight's papers. Tomorrow's papers are dominated by events in Berlin. The Irish Independent have gone with Adenauer's warning on sealing off the west of Berlin. West Berlin may impose sanctions. West Berliners have been warned not to approach securities of the East Berlin. Rumour has it that tear gas has been thrown towards the West Berliners that have approached the Brandenburg Gates. Herr Willy Brandt, Governor-Mayor of West Berlin, appealed to West Germans not to hurt fellow Germans who are trying to cross from the east to the west. Also in the Irish Independent, footballers flee to the west. Two players from the East German Dynamo football team who disappeared in Denmark were reported to have fled to the west after they were not seen in their homes for over a week. The Irish press also have gone with the story in Berlin. East Germans closed Brandenburg Gates, Berliners driven back. Interestingly enough, they still have a correspondent in Berlin. John Calcott, of UPI staff correspondent in Berlin, has been quoted to, "I drive through a city of fear. Yesterday morning, he ordered a taxi from the west to the east. The taxi driver was not to be named as he did not want sanctions imposed on him. After he travelled to the east, it was clearly seen that there was a lot of fear from the East Berliners, as there was as many police and armoured police as citizens." Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for watching. I've been Christopher Howley. This is Rachel Lyons with UL News. Good night.
Good night.